A whirlwind hit Indiana on June 17th, and it wasn't just another playoff night, it was a reckoning. Tensions that erupted during that momentous game were fueled by memories, grudges, and a fierce bond between teammates. Just weeks prior, on May 30th, the Connecticut Sun's Jacy Sheldon crossed the line in a physical rematch, leaving Indiana's Sophie Cunningham and Sydney Colson injured from reckless plays that went uncalled by the officials. Fast forward to the rematch, and when Sheldon poked Caitlin Clark in the eye, something inside the Fever ignited. What unfolded next sent a clear message: you don't mess with one of ours. Turning pain into defiance, that night proved that the Indiana Fever refuses to quietly accept intimidation. The story goes deeper than any stat line. It's about pride. Remember that first clash? Cunningham got hurt, even lost part of a front tooth. It wasn't just the ankle injury that stung, it was the violent collision that left her reeling. Think about the fundamentals of her game: the late nights perfecting footwork, the countless repetitions passing and pivoting, everything she's poured into her craft. That hurt wasn't just physical, it cut personal. And rest assured, neither she nor her teammates were going to forget that. Think back to May 30th, when two promising paths on the court shattered. The Sun brought aggressive physicality that tipped into dangerous blood sport, and the Fever paid the price. Cunningham taken out of the play, and Colson, struggling to get back up from a similar reckless assault, felt the consequences immediately. But the worst part was Jacy Sheldon was at the center of both injuries, and the referees did nothing. No foul, no whistle, nothing. The game ended 85-83, yes, but those scores didn't matter once two key players were back on the sidelines and fear morphed into frustration. Cut to June 17th, a colder intensity filled the arena as Clark returned from her quad injury with fire in her eyes. Her entire demeanor spoke volumes. She hadn't just recovered physically, she'd spent weeks replaying that fateful May matchup in her mind. So when Sheldon began guarding her like a shadow, bumping her on screens, breaching personal space, everyone in the stands knew something would break. And then it happened, the poke. Straight into Clark's eye. She doubled over, half in pain, half in rage, and naturally shoved Sheldon away. But shockingly, the refs ruled that reaction, defending herself from an eye poke, as a technical foul, while the offender walked away scot-free. You could feel a tremor run through fans and players alike. This wasn't just uneven reffing, it was disrespect. That moment turned heads, but it also turned plans. No official would step in, no whistle would blow, so the Fever took matter into their own hands. Marina Mabrey, who'd watched Clark bleed and stumble, charged in and body-checked Sheldon to the floor, a textbook hockey-style hit that shattered silence in the building. You could hear the gasp. A commentator even called it, she should be ejected. Instead, officials solemnly handed out, guess what? A technical foul against Mabrey. Not a flinch, not the protective flagrant one you'd expect. Just another tech. The crowd's murmur grew into chants as players screamed at the refs, "Are you even watching this?" With time ticking down and the Fever holding a commanding lead, Sophie Cunningham decided it was time to settle things. She saw Sheldon break free on a fast break, headed for the rim. In one swift moment, with calculated force, Cunningham executed a textbook flagrant 2, a bear hug that drove Sheldon hard onto the court. It wasn't meant to injure, but it was unmistakably payback. Two teams collided, tempers flared, and three players, Cunningham, Sheldon, and Mabrey, were ejected. But here's the point: Cunningham didn't hurt someone. She defended her squad. That hug spoke louder than any apology. The final buzzer confirmed more than a win. It cemented a statement: Indiana 88, Connecticut 71. Clark finished with 20 points and 6 assists. Natasha Howard notched her 50th career double-double, 16 points, 12 rebounds, and Kelsey Mitchell chipped in 17. Those numbers tell you this was more than a comeback win, it was solidarity in action. Indiana protected their own even when the refs refused to act. That kind of loyalty doesn't just win games, it defines cultures. Fans haven't stopped chanting, "Sophie, Sophie," since jerseys are flying off shelves. Social feeds exploded with hashtags like #SpicySophie, #CC, and #FeverFM. This wasn't a reckless foul, it was a message. A bold disagreement with injustice, all wrapped in one sharp play. Cunningham's actions didn't break the rules, they challenged them. And that's the kind of loyalty people crave in sports. In a league where the unexpected often becomes routine, this game stands out. It's the night Indiana said loud and clear they don't back down. Team over individual, defense as aggression, loyalty as armor. That energy carried them not only to this win, but right into their first ever Commissioner's Cup final, and they did it in style. That magic moment gave fans a reason to believe, rekindled wilderness of hope in a championship drought, and shone light on what really matters when bodies can't speak louder than words. Your teammates will hear you roar. Remember this when critics say professional sports are cold, perfunctory, void of heart. They'll be wrong. Indiana has proven that loyalty is alive, that reputation can be defended, and that championships aren't just won, they're protected. And with July 1's final looming, one word sums it up: solidarity. Indiana isn't just playing, they're fighting for something more. For themselves, for each other, for the Fever family. That's the kind of family you don't abandon. When the dust settled and players made their way to the locker rooms, there was a moment of silence, not out of fear, but out of reflection. The Indiana Fever had just made a statement that couldn't be ignored. This wasn't about revenge for the sake of drama. It was about restoring balance and showing that when the league fails to protect its stars, those stars will rise up and protect each other. The moment Sophie Cunningham committed that hard foul on Jacy Sheldon, it felt like the entire team had drawn a line in the sand. It wasn't just about one play, it was about every hard screen, every uncalled hack, every time a Fever player hit the floor with no whistle in sight. That foul said enough, and while critics might argue about the legality of Sophie's move, true fans of the game understood its purpose. It wasn't meant to injure, it was meant to deliver a long overdue message. Cunningham wasn't reckless. She was deliberate. She was calculated. She bore the weight of a locker room that had felt helpless under inconsistent officiating, and she turned it into action. Players like Clark, Sydney Colson, and even head coach Stephanie White knew in that moment they had someone in their corner who was willing to stand up when the rules failed them. That matters more than a highlight play. It builds trust. After the game, press conferences were filled with emotion. Clark, her eyes still red and slightly swollen, didn't throw anyone under the bus. Instead, she praised her team's resilience. "We knew what kind of game it was going to be," she said, "and I'm proud of how we responded, not just with skill, but with heart." Her words weren't just a media-friendly quote. They were a quiet salute to her teammates who had her back when it mattered most. Meanwhile, Coach White was more direct, demanding the league take a closer look at the officiating inconsistencies that had led to this powder keg. And if the league is paying attention, it should. Because what happened on June 17th wasn't a fluke, it was a boiling point. The WNBA prides itself on being a league of fierce competitors, but when player safety is sacrificed in the name of letting them play, it sends a dangerous message. Fans aren't just cheering for flashy threes or no-look assists, they're emotionally invested in these women. They want to see them rise, not be dragged down by unchecked physicality. The Fever's response wasn't about retaliation, it was about demanding accountability. With the Commissioner's Cup final now set for July 1st against the Minnesota Lynx, all eyes are on Indiana. But this time, it's not just about basketball. It's about identity. The Fever have declared themselves as more than contenders, they're defenders of their own. Fans from across the league are rallying behind them, not just because they win, but because they stand for something. Unity, loyalty, strength. That's what makes this team dangerous. That's what makes them beloved. And as they step onto the court for the Cup final, know this: win or lose, the Indiana Fever has already made history. This game wasn't just a victory on the scoreboard, it was a spiritual win for the entire franchise. The Indiana Fever showed the basketball world that they're no longer here to simply compete. They're here to set the tone. They're here to stand tall in the face of reckless physicality, biased officiating, and the kind of disrespect that has plagued this team all season. And when the league refused to protect them, they took matters into their own hands, not out of spite, but out of necessity. This was a declaration that this team will not be bullied, overlooked, or taken lightly ever again. Sophie Cunningham didn't just deliver a flagrant foul, she delivered a statement. Clark didn't just lead with 20 points, she led with heart, with composure, with unshakable resolve. And as for the rest of the team, they locked in, played their roles to perfection, and proved they're not just rallying around one star, they're building a sisterhood rooted in grit and loyalty. When one of them falls, the rest pick her up. And when one of them gets targeted, they all respond. That's what